an introduction and a kickoff, and Ken to talk about himself. But Ken and I met, and I don't even know, David, how you and Ken originally met, but like Tom Kaczynski, like many others that we started Masters of the Fly with, it was really on social media. And Ken was someone who was tying incredible flies and fished my neck of the woods, in particular in the New York Bight and down in the Jersey Shore. And when we were asking for help to get Masters of the Fly started, Ken was one of the very, very first people to jump into the fray. And I don't think I fully realized just how fine a tyer and an angler Ken was until we started to have some small sessions last season, as COVID really reared its ugly head at the very beginning. And from the very get-go, David and I said, if there's someone that we want to have on our inaugural official season, first season of Masters of the Fly, Ken was at the top of the list. So we're really thrilled to have Ken here. He's from Staten Island. He's tying the Rhodey Flatwing, which is one of my favorite flies. I know many of you tie the Rhodey Flatwing and fish the Rhodey Flatwing. It's one of those flies that's withstood the test of time. If anything, it's gotten more popular in our waters over recent years. It was more of a geographically specific fly for a long time, and now it's being fished all up and down the coast. Ken will talk a little bit more about why. And then the other thing that's interesting is Ken is primarily a shore angler, and I think I'm really interested to hear why he fishes the Rhodey Flatwing and how he fishes it in the surf and in what conditions, and why he sees an advantage with that fly. So I'll leave it there. David, anything to add regarding Ken?
I'll just say, I think I originally met Ken at Salty Fly Rodders conclaves and stuff like that. And, we always had, wonderful, albeit short conversations, but, again, it's, shared passions are what bring us all together, It's a great thing. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
And then hopefully all of you know Eric Schatzker by now, our fabulous interviewer, MC, Masters of the Fly editor at large, who during the day is Bloomberg's editor at large. So we're excited, as always, to have Eric here to lead the Q&A.
Thanks, Eric.
Well, I don't want to keep everybody from getting to Ken Ekelund. Ken, Luyan set it up perfectly. I want to make one point, though, which has come through in previous sessions, which is that Masters of the Fly is not just for fly tyers. It's for people who love fish, right? It's who love to catch fish. And the reason we talk about tying flies is because, gosh, what's better than catching a fish on your own fly? So let's get into that. As you start, Ken, right. I want you to talk about the fly that you're tying, why you're tying a flatwing, how you use this fly, why it's important to you, why it's meaningful to you, and the ways in which you use it. So why don't you get cracking, tell everybody what this fly is for those who aren't familiar with it, and then we'll let the conversation evolve from there.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank Lou and Dave and everybody for allowing me to do this. It's an honor. Why the flatwing? Well, what's number one about flatwing is you can represent bulk with not a lot of material. And it can represent a lot of different prey species in my neck of the woods. As Lou was saying, in the New York Bight. I am primarily a shore angler. So what I'm looking for is something that will cover all the bases. Okay.
By the way, some people may know you already. They may not know you by name, but you are the SI Fly Guy on Instagram, right?
Yeah, I'm SI Fly Guy on Instagram. It's just it's a fly that I've done well with. It's a fly that at different points of the year is tied differently. And like for now, I'll be tying what I call my bread and butter flatwing is a one that I can use now. Back bay. You got small bait running around. As soon as the water starts to get a little warmer now, the bass will start feeding heavily on prey on like silver sides, and small bunker, that are coming out of the estuaries. And that's what I'm tying this fly to represent.
So why don't you get cracking?
Sure. Well, first, flatwings are firstly originally a salmon fly, and made popular by Kenny Abrams. Now I'm going to be tying a flatwing. I'm going to be doing a flatwing how I tie it. There are multiple ways to do it. Different tyers do it differently. Kenny had his way of doing it, and you know that's great. But I'm going to do it the way I do it, and not to I don't want to have any confusion on that respect. But let's start with hook. Very important. You have to have a good hook. The two main ones I use are the Gamakatsu SC15s. This one is in a 3-0. And the Eagle Claw L253. The Eagle Claw is the traditional flatwing hook. The reason for that is that it's a strong hook, but with not a lot of mass. The things with flatwings is that you have material, but water also plays a part in the fly itself. I've been tying flatwings on the Gamakatsu and the Eagle Claw hook, but for tonight I'm going to be doing on the Gamakatsu. I'm going to be using some thin monofilament and various bucktails and a saddle. So let me start here. All right. So get a good thread base. So usually you want to get between the eye and the tip of the hook. Okay. So once you get to the tip of the hook, you stop there. Get a little bucktail. Now, any discussion about flatwings has to involve a discussion about bucktail. Bucktail has three main sections: the bottom, the middle, and the top. The sweet spot, as they're called, is from the middle up. Okay. My first tie-in, I'm going to be using the thinner or more hollower hair from the bottom of the bucktail. Okay, you'll see why in a minute. Let me get some out of here. Now I'm going to be using a pencil's width, usually. Okay, and I take out, I hope people can see this, taking out the smaller guard hairs. And it's just leaving me with the longer fibers. Okay. So
you do that just by kind of trimming, sort of stripping out the shorter hairs at the base.
If the way I do it is a little differently for obvious reasons, but what people do is they'll hold with one hand, hold the longer fibers in the other, and pull the shorter fibers out. I'm doing it down on the mat here. So I will square it off.
Ken?
Yes, sir.
When you have a minute, would you mind just sliding the vise a little bit away from you and to your right so that it's centered in the frame?
Better?
Yes, that's much better.
All right. So I want the hair to be maybe double the hook length. So what about there? So I'll use my, get that in this side. Now, like I'm doing this how I do it. For obvious reason, I had to make allowances. So how you're going to do it will be different. Now, what I'm doing is tightening, and I'm causing the hair to flare here. And that's going to act as the base of the flatwing. Okay.
So just making sure I understand, Ken. So you took those hairs from the bottom of the bucktail because you mentioned they were being hollow. So they spread more when you clamp down on it, right?
Correct.
So they're gonna spread out a little bit as you clamp that thread down on that hank.
Correct. Let's cut off the tag end of some of them here. Another important thing when you're tying flatwings or with any fly is where you source your materials from. One of the things with flatwings is you got to have quality saddles. It makes life easier. It helps with the kind of how the fly will swim, which I'll show you in a minute. But also bucktail, very important. You got to have quality bucktail. I recommend when you're buying bucktail to look at it first. And if you can, I know the year with no shows, it's kind of rough. Or you buy bucktail from people you trust. Okay. So that being said, the base level is the foundation is in. So what I will do is I'll take, this is a whiting neck, okay, neck hackle. Looking for a small feather here.
Ken, I'm just going to ask you to take a second, and because there may be some people here who are a little less schooled in the art of materials.
Right.
You just had a full neck, and before I saw you handling full saddles. Right. That's where you get quality feathers, right? We're not talking about strung saddle. We're not talking about schlappen. We're not talking about a lot of the stuff that you'll find at a fly shop. Right.
I mean, that's in my experience. I like to have quality hackle when I do flatwing specifically. It's just the way that the way the feathers are nice and long and slender. It adds to the body of the fly, in my opinion. Okay. Now this neck hackle here, I took. What's important about this is that the feathers in here are a little more stable, or they're a little more what's the word I'm looking for? They don't bend as much, for lack of a better term.
They're a little less webby, right?
There you go, that's it. And you can see here, it's upturned. I'm gonna be tying the feather in like this. Okay. Now you take a little of the marabou off at the bottom. So what I'm going to do with this marabou is I'm going to create a pillow that'll help lock the feathers in. If I can get this off here. Okay, here we go. And you just dub it on here. It doesn't want to do it. Of course, it doesn't want to do it. And to dub it on, you just rub, what do you call? Get it around the thread. Oops. Hold it up top. Bring it down.
So this is literally just some of the webby fibers from the base of the feather You're kind of
Correct.
stripping that off and you're twisting it onto the thread, kind of like the way you would make a body for a trout fly or something like that. And then you're wrapping the thread around there to give it that little bit of marabou body.
Correct. And that they refer to that as the pillow. And what the pillow does, it helps to stabilize and lock in the feathers. So let's get this on here.
And Ken, with that single feather, I saw that you showed the profile that it's upturned, so it has that nice curve to it. Is it
Right.
important that it's symmetrical right to left as well?
Yes. And then you'll see here in a second what I'm going to do here. I'm going to actually tie this in and pull it a little to lock it in place.
Mm.
One, two lock, two twist pinch wraps there. Pull that in. So what that's doing, that's acting as a spring.
Hmm.
Okay. Oops. Oops. Come on now. Hold that in there.
And you want it to lie flat and centered over the bucktail.
You want it to be a skip, you want it to be center. As best as center as possible. As close to the center as possible. And you don't want it longer than the bottom bucktail. All right. So let's cut this off. All right. So here's where the saddles come in. I get my saddles from Joe Cordero, flatwing.com. Being that there was no shows this year, he did a great thing. And for tires who like to tie flat wings, he put out a line of Flatwing saddles, which are top notch and are quality. With over the years, it was hard to find quality saddles. You had the Whiting used to make them. They used to come out with them. And they stopped making them. You would go to the shows, you would buy from Keo. These are Keo net saddles, graded by Joe and his son and colored the traditional Flatwing colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a feather that's long and slender and has that sword shape. So let's see. This one's a good one. White. As you can see here, it's got a thick midsection and this marabou here. I'm going to cut away a lot of this. What you're looking for is where the feather changes size dramatically. Okay, that's the stem in the feather. If you look at it, it will change size dramatically, and that's where you want to cut it. Okay. Good. Strip off some of the marabou on that. So we want to put that, layer that over the top. What's going on here? Get a little nuts. There we go. And what this is doing, in effect, you're creating bulk here. I'm just going to lock that in real quick. Let's see, let's get that straight as possible. Then I'll give it a little bit of a tug.
Both of the feathers you've used there are cream?
These are white. Yeah,
White. Okay.
white, yeah. It can be
Natural
whatever
white.
you have, you know, it's, yeah, these are white, more white than anything else.
Well, there's an important point. You mind expanding on? They can be whatever you have. Is that to say that the pattern works with all kinds of colors?
Correct. And what this is doing is this is creating a larger profile from underneath, which I'll show you. That's why you're looking at these feathers with the sword shape, because once this fly is complete, you look at it from underneath, it'll look like a wider body bait fish as opposed to the side. Okay. All right, so that's to get that in there. All right, so let's get it yellow. These feathers are about, I would say, about 5 inches that I'm putting in here after I cut them down. Let's see. But because I'm doing this to represent a specific type of bait fish, they could be really long. I've seen flatwings that are 10 inches long, 12 inches long. Let's see.
Do you ever have problems with them fouling, especially when they get longer, or does the bucktail really keep that feather from wrapping?
It's funny. They will foul really. I don't have problems per se, but I always wet the fly first before I throw it, so it all locks itself together. So it won't be fouling. I mean, all flies foul at some point. But I don't have a lot of fouling problems with these. So that's that one. Let's get that off. Oops. Put the get that on there.
And the pulling it forward just makes sure it kind of it gets straight and locks in place. Is that right?
Right. Now, right now I am just tying these loosely, just so that I can get them all in there, and then I'll lock it down. But this is going to be a 3-fly flatwing.
You know, I'm heartened, Ken, to see the time and care that you take with each of those feathers. Like sometimes I feel like I'm tying so slowly and I watch other people and it all goes so fast, but it is it's heartening to see you take the time and the love that you do with each of these feathers that you're tying in there.
Yeah. A lot of time, I mean, I'm doing this, I'm by myself in my basement usually, and I take my time. There's no sense in rushing. Now I'm going to put in a little flash here. This is Flashaboo. This is the rainbow. And what's the number here? 6924. That's the product number for this one.
Does it matter? Could you use pearl? Any
You
flash
can use,
blue?
I mean,
Silver.
You can use gold, rainbow colors. It all depends on how you feel about it. I'm not using a lot.
Ken, a question here, and
Sure.
an astute observation. The first feather you put in off the neck was curved upward, and these last 2 feathers that have gone in, the saddle feathers have gone in flat. Now, they don't have the same natural bias, right? The curve of the
Correct.
saddle feathers. And
Correct.
so does it matter which side of those feathers you lay down?
Yes. They got to be concave. Yeah, they got to be folding down.
Folding. Okay, so the first feather folds up and the next feathers fold down.
Right. So what the one on the bottom is doing, it's holding these up. So it's creating that bulk.
Yep.
Because when that fly is being stripped in, it'll pulsate. Let's get this in a little tighter here. Nice to finish. And the final feather.
And the Flashaboo is just going straight down the stem of those feathers.
Straight down the center, as best as you can get it. I mean, there's no wrong way to do this. You know, whatever works for you. I mean, that's the only. I'm not a purist. I'm not a flatwing purist. I tie what works for me. I have some real ugly ones that work. You know, and that's just how I've learned it. Let me see. Let's go. There it is.
But as with the non-flatwing style fly, you're intentionally going light to dark, bottom to top, I assume.
Correct.
In terms of color.
Yeah. Correct. I tied them all white. I tied them all black.
Ken, could you talk a bit while you're doing this about how you fish the flatwing, particularly in the surf? Are you using, what kind of line are you using? Floating intermediate, or are you stripping it in? Are you letting it drift?
I've been using floating line a lot in the surf recently over the past few years. It's for me, sometimes it's easier to control in the areas I fish. The key with flatwings is they're best if they're fished in current. Okay. And now the current on the beach is the sweep. So I'm fishing it with a floating line, and depending which way the sweep is going, most of the time I'm fishing it in the trough between the break and the shore. All right. Let's see here. Let's get that in there. Okay, so let's get that in over here. All right, so now I got all the feathers in there. Get a little sprucing up here.
But just to clarify, that's the flatwing is perfectly useful in other applications than fishing the trough off the beach.
Of course. Oh, of course. Of course. They're built for current. Estuaries. I mean, the fly originated, flatwing style originated in New England. Kenny Abrams were fishing these in estuaries and in inlets. Okay, so let's get that. All right, so that's being done. So I will add now.
And can I assume you're talking about their fishing, their effectiveness in current is because my experience is they're so lifelike with even very little movement from the angler. The current is really making it look alive in the water, as opposed to something that's oftentimes with more synthetic material flies, or like an epoxy fly where there's just very little material that's going to breathe in the water. These things just have a life to them, even with a minimal amount of current in the water.
And they will change color. It's very weird. They will change their color depending on how you're looking at them, which is kind of cool. And that goes along with the blending, if you choose to blend. But now let's get, so that now I have all the feathers in. I'm going to now use some body braid here. I'm going to create the body. Now I want to start back where the feathers are tied in, but I'm going to end a little ahead of the hook eye. So I don't want to create a big head with these flies. So I try to keep the head as small as possible. Try, anyway. Let's get some body braid. This is Bill's body braid in pearl. It's all wrapped up on itself. Tie it in. I first learned about flatwings fishing the rip at Sandy Hook, at the top at the North Beach. I knew of them, but I've never seen them used in my neck of the woods. I ran into someone using them at Sandy Hook, and he was fishing it kind of very in a nymphing fashion, just bouncing it along the edge. If anyone's familiar with Sandy Hook Rip, the water gets very deep very quickly. And this person was bouncing these flatwings down along this edge, and he was hooking up one after another. So ever since then, I've tried to learn this fly, and I think I've done pretty well with them over the years. But okay, so now I tie it into body braid, move the thread up to just right before the hook eye. Use my cradle. Let's tie in.
Ken, a couple good questions here in the Q&A. William McLaughlin was asking about the flash used. Do you ever add a darker colored flash to resemble a lateral line, which is interesting?
I could. I don't see why not. But this is a rainbow. This is multiple color Flashaboo. So it's got dark, it's got some light in it. So I could add darker. There's no problem. There's nothing. Not that you can't. Sure, why not? All right. So, like I said, it's whatever works for you.
Matt Gilonis was also clarifying that in his view, which makes sense from my experience, you want a stiffer curved up feather. We were talking about this earlier, but just to clarify, that bottom feather is stiffer and curved up to support the stack of additional feathers that are on top of it.
Right. All right, so get that in. Okay, so now I have the body, I have the feathers, and now I'm going to create the wings. So, all right. So let's get, again, I'm taking bucktail from the bottom of the hide. Again, another maybe a pencil's width. As Joe says, he's going to strip out the rats, the guard hairs.
I did notice, so maybe I missed it, but you didn't seem to really worry, at least with the bottom hackle, to sort of get the tips stacked or lined up. It was as much. It was getting the guard hairs out, but just
right.
You don't care that much about them all being.
No. Well, I'm going to square them off before I tie them in.
Gotcha.
Measure. Now we want the bottom wing to be just under, just about at the end of the bucktail you tied in when you started. I guess that's good. Let's get this in. Tighten that off. All right. Move the hair around. Look.
Ken, one of the questions that came in from Alan Berger was about sort of you're thinking about varying the fly color, and do you generally is the variation on the top of the fly as opposed to the bottom? You generally use white
Generally
for the
use
bottom, and then
off-white. But white usually just fits the bill for me.
Mhm.
But if I'm tying a fly that's going to be fishing at night, I might do purple on the bottom, black on the top.
Mhm. And are there specific color combinations that you always find yourself going to for the bait that you are encountering at different parts in your season in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, olive white, olive yellow white, chartreuse white, black purple, some grizzly, and yeah, that's my color palette with these. You can tie them all white. Actually, I tied all white for a friend of mine last week, and it represents a bunker very nicely. All right, so that's done. So what a lot of people do with flatwings, which I'll show here, is blending of the bucktail. All right, you can use a straight, color if you want. This is like a light olive, which would work nice here. What I'm going to use a bucktail I blended a little earlier, of light olive, blue, and some yellow. And how you do that is you cut a little pieces out, little tufts of hair out, lay them together, and just mix them. Like a deck of cards, putting them over each other. Roll them in your fingers. You can do this, and they all measure and they all mix. Again, it doesn't. It works for you. There's no set formula for it.
Ken, one quick question here from William McLaughlin about
Sure.
the bottom wing, the lower wing. Is that hair? Is it sort of stacked on top? Or have you spread it around the hook at all?
Good question. I did a pinch wrap on it, so it'll stand up. But I used my thumb and I moved it around. What I'm thinking, the sides of the hook. It's not all the way around the hook. All right. So I'm going to take a little of this bucktail that I mixed, so I can show it a little better here.
And sorry, Ken, going back to your earlier point about where you were taking it,
right?
From is not from the base now, so you don't want as hollow here, or are you taking them from the middle and the upper part?
These hairs I took from what they refer to as the better part of the bucktail.
Can you just show that for folks where
Sure.
that is? Thanks, man.
Right. So those hairs are taken from the middle to the top of the bucktail. The bottom of the bucktail here is really not good for this type of tying because they'll flare, all right, a lot. So I took it from the middle to the top.
So you really only use those ones to flare on that first hank that you're tying in effectively at the back of the hook, just to create a platform there, as it were.
Correct. All right, so now I have this bit again about a pencil's width. Try not to drop it. Let's take out the guard, take out the small pieces.
And do you want the variation in length, Ken, or do you ever stack your bucktail?
I like the variation in length. I do.
Okay.
All right, so let me square this off. Let's see. So I want to put that Usually I want it to be right by where the last bucktail, the bottom wing I tied in. Usually want it right about there where it ends, or maybe even a little ahead of that. There's a little much here. A little bit in, more out. How we doing on time? All right? Yeah, okay.
Take your time.
Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes here, but we'll stop interrupting you so much and let you get to it. And then for everyone on there also, if you're willing, Ken, we'll go long also, a little long for anyone who wants some extra innings on this as well, but we'll see if we can get
All right.
close to finish in the time allotted.
Yeah, we're not going to worry about time, Ken. This is so great watching this fly being created by you. So we're just going to keep going. We might interrupt you at the top of the hour for a moment, but we're going to keep this up.
Okay.
And Ken, on that wing that you just tied in and the one underneath it, are you massaging that around the side of the hook as well, or is that more up and down?
I am. Sometimes a bucktail doesn't want to cooperate, so I gotta force it to. So that, and then now I will give this a nice cinch it in.
So it's covering about 180 degrees of the hook.
Right.
We can see that.
Yeah,
In
you
fact,
can
would you mind turning the vise on its side so we can see how the how you have the. There we go.
And actually, if you can slide that a little bit towards the front forward, yeah, that's
perfect.
great.
That's great.
All right. God, that's beautiful. That starts to really come alive there. You can see the profile.
It does. And what I like to do on my flatwings here, I don't do them on all of them, but since I'm showing this one, I'll do it on this one. I mixed some various other colors, some blues and some yellows and some reds. Just take a little bit. Let's see here. Put them on, I don't know, put them aside so people could see it. Then I'll work that into it.
You're tying it in on the side as a cheek?
A cheek, yeah. So I'm just massaging it in so it's spreading out a little bit. On the other side. Oops. Red. I always like, in all my flies, I always like a little red, like a little lavender. Because if you look at a bait fish, it changes color. It's iridescent. It's
and when you say you're not a purist,
right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the flatwing has a long and storied tradition. There are ways to tie these flies. You have guys who tie them like Kenny ties them, and that's great. They might have a problem with how other people do it, but like I said, that's not me. It's however you want to do it. Whatever works for you. I'm maybe not so much a purist that I'm not a traditionalist. Maybe that's a better term. Let's see, let's get that in there.
And where do you come down? I know this has been a ongoing dialogue throughout this Masters of the Fly series this season, but how important do you think eyes are on this tie to you?
To me, I go either way. It doesn't have, I mean, not all my flies have eyes on them. So there's two schools of thought on that. Some guys believe that you need the eye on the fly because the bass targets the head of its prey. Okay, I'm sure it happens. I'm no expert on the striped bass, but I know what works for me. I've used flies with eyes. I've caught fish. I've used flies without eyes. I've caught fish. So it pretty much what I feel at any particular moment. I'm going to put jungle cock on these, just to show how that's done. If people like to use them, you don't need them, but I like to put them on my flatwings sometimes. So let me get two spikes that are close in size.
And speaking of traditional, this is truly the traditional way to finish a
Correct.
flatwing.
This is the traditional way to put eyes on flatwings using jungle cock capes. You can buy synthetic artificial ones with just the spikes. I don't know what they're made out. I don't know if they're made out of paper or what. So let's get this one smaller one here. Let's get two. So this is the capes when we take them. This is the spikes when we take them off. Better look here. Darn it, in there. See them.
Hold on. Can you hold that? Yeah, center it under the camera there.
Sure.
Couldn't quite see that, Ken. Bring it down a little bit. Yeah, a little further towards the fly, so it'll focus on it. Yep.
And you see that dark area acts as a pupil. So you want to do is you want to stabilize them. I use a little Overton's Wonder Wax for that. And you just pull the spike across it. So let me cut it. Cut this.
Oh, Ken, do you ever use a super glue to to make sure that bucktail stays firmly in place with the mono thread?
I do. I didn't do tonight, but I was kind of hoping someone didn't see that because I forgot. I forgot to bring it over, but I do use it. A lot of times I will whip finish every time I put a feather on. Maybe a little dab of super glue.
I thought it was interesting with Johnny King in our last session that he doesn't use any adhesive until he uses the liquid fusion at the end for the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he felt that they're perfectly fine.
Let's put the eye on. I hope I'm not blocking it from everybody here. Little pull. All right. Let's do the
How
other
durable
side.
are these, Ken? How durable are these flies?
I wish I could say they'll stay on the life of the fly, but a lot of times they don't.
No, I was not the eyes, the flies themselves.
Oh, they're
The
durable.
flatwing is
They're
pretty durable fly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood, Eric.
No problem. I'm assuming that durable until it meets a bluefish.
Till it meets teeth, and then it comes back a mangled mess, and then it gets retired. Let's see. Put that in there. always try to be perfect with these eyes, but a lot of times it's hard to get them perfect. Close that up. Cut it off here.
Funny, Matulonis is saying that apparently Kenny Abrams would count out the bucktail hairs he used.
Yeah, he does. He did. That I heard the same thing.
That's amazing.
I mean, he was such an innovator. I listened to his podcast last week.
Yeah, the Saltwater Edge podcast. For anyone who's interested, it's up on their website.
Yeah, the stories that man has, and I could listen to him for hours. And how he was talking about the first Flatwing, he threw it up against a buoy or a channel marker, and it's just full of stories. But anyway, I'm going to finish this fly off with Peacock Curl. 5 to 7 strands. And now the reason behind that, from what I understand, the reason for 5 to 7 is that's how many stripes a striper has.
Well, Kenny Abrams would be really happy about you counting something out. So, and guys, just so you know, we are now at 9:01. We're going to keep on going, gang. We're going into overtime here with Ken. So just stick around. And, we've got maybe, Lou, we want to do some announcements as we're continuing. What do you think?
Yep. We'll let Ken keep going, and then we'll continue with him. But I guess just very quickly, since some people will have to leave, I think the major announcements, I think we've covered most of it, but just a reminder that our next events are April 11th, Tony Friedrich tying the May the Force Be With You fly. Really interesting, innovative tie. Many of you may know Tony as John McMurray's partner with the American Saltwater Guides Association out of Maryland. So that will be a really good session. And then we end this season's series with James Prozac on May 2nd.
Yes.
And that should be a really interesting one as well. So look forward to seeing you all there.
I'm turning my camera on for half a second. Pardon me, Ken.
Yep.
I'll do the same.
As soon as my camera. So everybody, this is the sticker we'll be sending you. And this is the sticker you can request. Here they are live right now tonight. So it's not just our logo. It's show your team colors. And for us at Masters of the Fly, here it is. All right, guys. So don't forget, we're going to be giving some of these away in one of the next 2 events. So, don't forget to tell your friends, and we hope to have more merchandise as we go along.
Yeah, and also make sure you all get the Next Tail Fly Fishing Magazine. I guess it's the April-May edition or the May-June edition.
It's whatever. It's the next edition that comes out will be featuring some of our fly tiers. Ken right here, yours truly, and Lu Yen, and also Johnny King, and we'll have a little bit of information about those flies in the article. It's photos and words.
All right.
So with that, thank you to everybody. We're going to keep going here, but understand it's the Sunday night before school day. So understand if everyone has to leave, but we will continue for another 15 minutes or so we can take your questions and continue to tie this beautiful fly. But thanks to everyone.
And let me just say, thank you for watching us and not watching your brackets tonight. We really appreciate it.
I was done as soon as Illinois lost, so it didn't matter to me anymore.
I kind of wanted Georgetown. I liked what Patrick Ewing did in the Big East.
Well, while you guys are doing that, I added some Peacock Curl and I whip finished
Beautiful.
it. And all I'll have to do is just add a little Solarez or head cement. But what I like to say here is that with not a lot of material, I've created a fly with a nice profile. you can see from the bottom, I don't know if you can see this way with the camera, but this fly will open up in current, and it's just a great fly overall. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes.
Ken, a couple of questions here on that subject. Do you ever add lead wraps underneath the braid if you want to fish it deep?
You could. I don't. I don't see why you can't. Some guys they'll add it to the hook bend. I've seen it, and then wrapped. But I personally don't.
And another question here, and this gentleman, Michael, is absolutely right. Acquiring a range of colors in saddles is not exactly a cheap proposition.
No.
Is it worth tying these flies shorter if necessary, using cheaper feathers?
Yes. It's like I said before, it's what you have. You know, it's you do the best you can. You know, I was lucky I got my hands on some of these, but you could use a strung saddle. I don't a strung hackle. I don't see why you can't.
Helps, I guess, to have that. It would help to have a decent neck feather to prop things up on the bottom, though.
And these neck feathers, I got this from the Saltwater Edge, so you can get these. It's with the different colors that if you look at the different colors that are done with Flatwings, you have American Beauty, which is a kind of a pink, a squid color. These are colors that are hard to find. So if you come across them, if I come across a color that I can, I'll buy it. I'll grab it. But yes,
can you rotate the fly on its side so we can see it up close from the profile? Oh, that's so beautiful.
I mean, you could see here with when I added those pink and red hues. I mean, it acts, a little iridescence, And then what I'll do is I'll wet this fly and dry it, and then it'll be good to go.
So that's actually an important piece of this that's important, that it might be worth noting, right? So do you wet them and actually hang them to get the shape you want? Are you as fastidious about it as that? I know people do that with hollow flies, for instance.
All my flies, hollow flies, flatwings, I'll run them under warm water and hang them up. I let them dry overnight for a few hours. And sometimes it tames the bucktail. It'll tame some errant strands or errant fibers. Something that someone from my club, the Bayshore Fly Rodders, told me to do, and I've been doing it ever since, and I've never had any problems.
And so what do you do to hang? How do you hang them?
Well, I get those little command strips, and they have a little hook, and I just take a paper clip and open a little small paper clip and hang them. They'll sit like this or on my sign desk.
That's great.
Here's a question, Ken. Gentleman asks about feathers. He bought a flatwing saddle and found that the feathers are very long and thin, not triangular like the ones that you tied in. Are those still fine to use? And
Yes.
If so, any changes?
You can. Let's see, maybe I would find one. What I have it. Oh, here's one. Maybe he has them similar to this. You can definitely use these. Even though it's a thin base, you can definitely, I used one of these feathers in here. You just got to cut the marabou off and use a little bit and clear some of the stem. They'll work fine.
I guess it depends partly on the profile you're trying to get, right? So if it's a bigger, wider bait fish, you want that kind of wider.
A wider base feather, that white feather I tied in. If you're doing say a bigger bunker or something,
Mhm.
would be better. But it's like I said before, it's what you have.
And another question here about the head. When you're cementing the head, whether you're using, I guess you're using some UV resin, but if
I'll
could
do
be
it.
anything. Are you just cementing the monofilament wraps there right behind the hook eye?
Correct.
Okay.
I use Solarez bone dry
Mhm.
stuff. You could
Great
use
stuff.
nails. That works just as good. You could use crazy glue. That works. So just put a little bit on here. And you can style with the bodkin. Make sure you get a nice cylindrical head. And just hit it with the light. Vinny?
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Nicely done, Ken.
Thank you. Hopefully it'll
Really
be
great, Ken. Yep, no, fantastic stuff, and I can't wait to get on the vise and tie a few of these myself. Just a reminder for everyone out there too, we have sort of a pre-made set of materials. If you didn't get it already for this session, that is available through Chris Windrum at saltwaterflies.com. If you go to our website, mastersofthefly.com, and you look up Ken's event page, it has a link to it. We'll put a link actually in the chat too. But if you didn't do it already, you can buy all the materials that we used tonight and tie this on your own at home. We'll post the video to both our Facebook page, Masters of the Fly, but also to our YouTube channel. If you just search for Masters of the Fly, it'll come up in the next day or two. It should be up. And I find it really helpful to actually watch it while I'm tying the first couple of times, and I'll pause it and rewind and so forth. But you can have all the materials through saltwaterflies.com. You'll have the video on YouTube for review.
And Ken, just that last little step there, you were just preening that peacock curl, right, to get just like as if it were Christmas ribbon, right, to get that nice curl to it.
You got it.
It's
And it creates a little more of the bulk without a lot of material. Because as I'm stripping this fly, it'll pulsate. It'll collapse upon itself, and when I release, it'll open up, close, open up. And that's the meaning. I mean, that's the use of the you preen the herl, and you use the up end feather. So it just keeps everything separated. When you release.
In the surf, that kind of breathing of the fly as it moves is really important, don't you think, Ken?
I agree. Yes, sir. It is.
Yeah. Beautiful. Let's see. We are now approaching a quarter after the hour. Ken, thank you so much. That was great. Lou, Eric, I think this has been an amazing show. Ken, I cannot wait to get you on the bow of the boat this summer. Sometime in July, you're going to be there, and you're going to be fishing with me and Lou.
I'm looking forward to it.
And we're gonna fish only flatwings. One of the things we mentioned on our last, but,
That's right.
and in all seriousness, as David mentioned on the last Johnny King event, we will be filming some outings where we're using the specific flies that were tied for these sessions. So look for that.
That's right.
On our website.
We're going to have content from each fly tied in every session. And just talking about the next session, don't forget to go on the Masters of Fly website to go to saltwaterflies.com actually and get Tony's fly tying materials if you haven't ordered it already. And this thing right here, gang. Wait, was that upside down? That was upside down. this thing right here, gang, we've got them waiting for you. All you have to do is ask.
Well, I
Awesome.
I hope folks got something out of this.
Oh, for sure, Ken. It's a great night. Great
Yeah,
job.
I'm
Thank you
giving
so
you
much.
a hand. I think it was an incredible fly. Thank you, Ken.
Very well.
Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you all hopefully on April 11th.
Yeah, April.
Take
11th.
care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.